Hello, this is Rob Shaw. I'm the founder of the Mountain Tactical Institute, and welcome to the MTI podcast. Today is December 18th, 2024. Several topics this week. A couple from two or three from Rhett I put together this week, which is the weekly collection of websites and articles and interesting things I see in the world of mountain and tactical athletes and fitness in general. Um, Secondly, I'm going to go over a couple of the mini studies that recently completed at MTI and some of the results from that. And third, we're going to talk about a couple of essays I've written in the past and thoughts I've had about quiet professionalism. Just a couple of nuggets on quiet professionalism, things that I use almost every day that kind of help me, stay on that path or work to become a better quiet professional every day. So first, getting back to Rhett, I haven't really covered too many Rhett topics this last couple podcasts. I just haven't seen anything that's been very interesting in the articles that I put together or worthy of the podcast mention. But this week there was an article in American Greatness and it's titled Clown Commandant. And that kind of got my attention. And then I found another article this is an American Spectator titled Generals Should Win Wars Before Declaring Victory. Anyway, there's been this kind of general theme of vibe shift that I think all of us have noticed lately amongst in the country concerning the U.S. military, and especially the perception of general officers or flag officers in the military. And the vibe shift has been a shift from heroes and warfighters to bureaucrats. And there's some stories in Rhett that kind of continue along with this line of this vibe shift that I just found interesting. Both these first two articles, this one, Clown Commandant and Generals Should Win Wars Before Declaring Victory, are opinionated columns or opinion pieces that were driven by the Commandant of the Marine Corps, General Eric Smith, some comments he recently gave at a National Defense Forum. And as I understand it correctly, that the gist of his comments were that the U.S. really shouldn't fear anything from China because the last war China fought, people are still painting pictures in pastels and oil paintings and weren't taking photographs and let alone cell phone videos and everything else. The point about it is, his opinion is that because of the U.S. military's last 20 years or so work and wars we fought, the forever wars, we're more up to speed, more tuned, more in shape than the Chinese military. And both these articles or both these authors take issue with this. I guess, one of the articles sounds like he was in the Marines, and he just thinks that this is a grandiose comment, signs of hubris, and kind of disconnected from reality. And overall, the idea that the U.S. military, this is another thing I've seen recently in opinion pieces, has just shifted away from its warfighting role. And he's pretty critical. Both these articles and others are in a Rhett this week. The article in the American Spectator, and the title is Generals Should Win Wars Before Declaring Victory, also critiques General Smith's overconfidence and underestimation of adversaries. And again, the way he summarized what General Smith said, General Smith said that U.S. combat experience in Iraq and Afghanistan would guarantee victory over China due to China's lack of recent conflict or combat. He points to, some issues that we kind of had with opinions about Japan before World War II. They were behind in technology and et cetera. And it turns out they were pretty worthy adversaries. And he just points to hubris here. The implication here, he says, is that Chinese have grown soft and weak while Americans have developed a warrior culture due to our recent combat experience. And he writes, the assumption is wrong on several levels because it's disturbing because Smith is one of the architects of an extremely questionable new strategy aimed specifically at China. And he just points some general hubris amongst the U.S. military, specifically the general officers. Other things have come up recently, lately, the sentencing of a couple of the officers who were naval officers who were caught up in the Fat Leonard scandal. That was a few years ago. There were some bases in the Pacific, and this businessman would pay off ship captains and admirals to dock at his facilities and then overcharge the Navy for services provided when the ship docked there. That's something that's come up recently. And another story that I point to in this, again, we're kind of getting at the general theme or the vibe shift of flag officers and senior military officials from being warfighters to bureaucrats. Another article that kind of hit this theme I have in this week's read is titled "The Army is Too Top Heavy," and it's in Defense One, which is a pretty insider type publication. A lot of people in the Defense Department and the military industrial complex and Congress and stuff read articles that come up in Defense One. This author critiques the U.S. Army's structure, arguing it's become over-bureaucratic with a huge excess of admirals, generals, staff, and headquarters. He says growth in staff size and proliferation of unneeded headquarters is accompanied by a strong tendency to over-officer the force. And this has significantly increased personnel costs since 9/11 because officers cost more because they make more in terms of salaries and benefits than enlisted guys. Currently, 1 in 6 soldiers in the U.S. Army is a commissioned officer, a 21% increase since 2000. He says that about 1/3 of the Army's personnel budget goes for officers' pay and allowances. The number of general and flag officers in the U.S. military as percent of the total force has increased by 46%. 4 stars by 114%, and 3 stars by 149%. The Army, he writes, is awash in staffs, many of which did not exist during World War II or even after the 1990s. After 9/11, the Army staff grew by 60%, while headquarters and staffs Army-wide ballooned. Anyway, these are pretty interesting statistics, and again, getting back at this bureaucratic expansion of the Army, especially in the officer ranks and at the flag level. And this kind of led me to another story, an article, and this is actually a study that was completed in 2023 in July, or in the summer of 2023. Let's see. It was completed by the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft, and the headline and the title of the study is March of the 4 Stars, the Role of Retired Generals and Admirals in the Arms Industry. Key findings, 80% transition rate. Of the 32 4-star officers who retired between June 2018 and July 2023, 26 of them, or over 80%, went to work for the arms industry as board members, advisors, executives, consultants, lobbyists, or in financial institutions that invest in defense. So this is kind of a revolving door, and we see this a lot with these military officers who go right from service right to the arms industry, right in the military industrial complex. And I think it reinforces this idea that these are just bureaucrats. Anyway, I don't think it sits well with a lot of people, and especially now with this vibe change that's kind of occurring. The notable examples, General Joseph Dunford joined Lockheed Martin's board 5 months after retiring. General Mike Murray went to the boards of Capewell, Harporia, and Vida upon retirement from the Army Futures Command. General Terrence O'Shaughnessy, a senior advisor to Elon Musk at SpaceX, after leading the U.S. Northern Command. That's interesting, given Musk and the upcoming Trump presidency. General Richard Clark joined General Dynamics, Shift 5, and General Atomics after commanding the U.S. Special Operations Command. General John Raymond, managing partner in Cerberus Capital Management. Admiral Burke, Center for Human Capital Innovation. Anyway, some recommendations from this report was barring 4-star officers from working for companies with significant Pentagon contracts and extending cooling off periods for former officers can lobby on behalf of the defense industry. And this is just the 4 stars. If you can just kind of understand, and this is 80% of 4 stars. Well, I don't see any stats, although maybe there's been a study completed on 3 stars, 2 stars, 1 stars, colonels, even senior enlisted who move right from the military to the defense contractors. Again, I guess the kind of this vibe shift that I've kind of noticed in the press and the media and just on social media and stuff that I observe and see is this shift of the general officers and the flag officers in the military, and I think the officer corps in general, a shift from being warfighters to being bureaucrats, and how that's a problem. Next, kind of huge shift here is there was an article in I think it was in Climbing Magazine on their 9 favorite climbing podcasts. I've never actually listened to a climbing podcast. And so that's why I kind of thought this was really interesting, and I intend to listen to some of these. They have 9 of them, a couple that I'll just point out that sound really interesting. The Sharp End, this is produced by the American Alpine Club. It shares stories of climbing's accidents to educate and prevent future mishaps, providing a sobering look at climbing's risks. Every once in a while, the American Alpine Club puts out incident reports on climbing incidents and the causes. And it's amazing how many times just, people running out of their, their belaying, and they're running out of belaying rope because they didn't tie a knot at the end of it. I don't mean to laugh. I mean, or just not double checking knots, tying a figure 8, but not hooking it into your carabiner. There's all kinds of reasons that even experienced climbers make. They end up in incidents and even deaths. And it would be interesting to listen to this podcast. I like, there's one called the Careless Talk Climbing Podcast, where host Sam Pryor and Adrian Roberts offer a more casual conversation approach with elite climbers, often delving into broader life topics. And then the Run Out host Chris Callis and Andrew Bisharat, I'm probably slaughtering that name, my apologies, discuss current climbing topics and interview notable figures in the sport. Anyway, the link to this article is in Arete, 9 favorite climbing podcasts. I'll look for more of these. I'll look for some skiing podcasts and others and start listening to them. There's one, Climbing Beta, discussions on climbing training, nutrition, and mental aspects. Definitely want to listen to that one. Kind of along in the fitness world, I saw a story in the New York Times today that I included in Arete, and it's titled "Greg Glassman, CrossFit's Disgrace Guru Attempts a Comeback with MetFix." So Greg Glassman founded CrossFit. I first became aware of CrossFit in the mid-90s. I went to one of their first certifications, I think, and kind of followed his work, went to a couple other of their, kind of coaching things, even went to Santa Cruz one time, the original gym. I shook hands with Greg Glassman. I'd hardly say I know him personally or anything like that. I've never had a discussion with him about strength conditioning or anything with my gym. But I owe Greg Glassman, I think everybody now in the functional fitness space owes Greg Glassman just a huge debt of gratitude. And it's been disappointing to see over the years him and CrossFit take so much negative press and never seen any acknowledgement for what he did for not only bringing functional fitness to the masses, including me, but even things like Olympic lifting. I mean, making equipment so much cheaper. Oh my God, when I first opened my gym in mid 1990s, you could not get a squat rack like you can now for $400. I mean, squat racks, only a few companies built them, and they cost like $2,000. In fact, there was this other company called Bigger, Faster, Stronger that kind of catered to high school athletes, and their excuse me, headquarters was in Salt Lake, and I was in Jackson. I actually drove down Salt Lake, borrowed Curtis P's uh, heavy duty trailer, and went down there and loaded up with a bunch of equipment from their warehouse. They had like a seconds spot, and I got a bunch of their stuff they hadn't sold for as cheap as I could. I remember pulling barbells out of the dumpster they were going to throw away. That seemed fine to me. They were kind of rusted, but maybe a little bent. But for the first 5 years, that's what we used in my gym. Anyway, yeah, if you're just getting into, outfitting your garage gym now, believe me, Rogue Fitness and all the different ones you cater. In fact, there's a link in the Ret about a bumper plate deal that's available through Walmart. We can get 260 pounds of bumper plates for like $180. And I remember 45-pound bumper plates costing like $200 a piece back when I started. It was really expensive. So yeah, just in terms of the equipment and purchasing it, the popularity of CrossFit and all its offshoots, Glassman, we owe him to thank for that. Olympic lifting, again, I was never a collegiate athlete. If any note, I was on the rugby team at the academy, but we didn't have a strength and conditioning staff at the academy for sure. And, I don't think there was a strength coach, period. Snatches, clean and jerks, all those, I got introduced later in life when CrossFit came out. And he did that for many, many, many people. I remember going to an established Olympic weightlifting course at the Olympic Training Center put on by U.S. Weightlifting, which is the organization that runs Olympic weightlifting contests. And many of the other students were like me, either doing their own fitness or starting a gym or CrossFitters or whatever. And I remember the instructors who were Olympic weightlifting coaches for years just going, "This is amazing. I've never seen anything like this." And now, I mean, I've heard stories that, CrossFitters have gone on to, high level competition just in Olympic weightlifting. I didn't grow up with the sport at all, but he kind of introduced, Glassman did, those lifts to us. The whole work capacity stuff, with his multimodal work capacity. Others had done it in the past, but no one had done it like he did and made it as popular. And then you get to the whole fitness as a sport thing. That's one of the powers of CrossFit, fitness as a sport. And he's kind of created this entire new sport, or he did. And it was just amazing where that's gone. And now you got High Rocks and all these different things. I think he has roots in the Go Ruck stuff and the Spartan races. All that stuff came after CrossFit. And I think that we just owe him a debt of gratitude. He was always controversial. I never followed it really closely. But he was always a little controversial. It kind of had an edge to him. I do remember, if I remember right, that he sued the NSCA, the National Strength Conditioning Association, after they published a academic research project that was really critical of CrossFit methodology. Turned out there were some funny statistics in that. I can't remember if he won that lawsuit or not. Someone else might know, and I haven't had a chance to look it up. But NSCA always blew him off. They never wanted anything to do with him. And I can say the same for me, even as a longtime holder of a certification with NSCA. I've been to their I think it was the first NSCA tactical athlete or programming coach conference they ever had was in Vegas. I went to it, and they badmouthed my company in a presentation up there, put me right along CrossFit as saying we were super extreme. At that time I was working with thousands of military athletes, helping with their day-to-day fitness and prepare for Afghanistan and stuff. So the NSCA was always hostile to him, and I think the fitness industry in general was. Anyway, um, he, I think we owe a lot of debt. I mean, military fitness, he changed it. I mean, Marines kind of adopted CrossFit unofficially. You can just see what a huge impact that had on military fitness. And if you're in the U.S. military now, and you can go to a functional fitness facility at your base, you can thank Greg Glassman for that. Because I went to military gyms before CrossFit came around, and they were full of machines and universal machines. And they had a couple benches and a couple curl bars, and that's it. There weren't any squat racks. There weren't any bumper plates. There wasn't any climbing ropes. There wasn't any of that stuff. That all came about, kind of in the wake of Glassman, the CrossFit revolution, and everything else. So I think it's safe to say that few people in the fitness industry, if anybody, has had as much influence as CrossFit and Greg Glassman. I guess it's Greg Glassman. And if you read some of his early, writings and stuff, not only did he create, kind of a really interesting, training methodology in the sport of fitness and all that stuff, but I mean, I still refer back to many of the essays that he wrote about strength and conditioning and what's important and everything else, that he wrote in his old CrossFit journal. I used to have a subscription to the CrossFit journal. For some of you old timers out there. Anyway, he got into trouble, I think, for some comments he made after the George Floyd incident. And then I think he had to resign or sell. And there were some other issues, I think, with sexual harassment. Anyway, he's, according to this article in the New York Times, he's kind of teamed up with a journalist, and they created this new company called Metfix, Metfix. And I kind of look it up. There's this website called brokenscience.com, or I'm sorry, brokenscience.org, brokenscience.org. And it sounds like it emphasizes the foundational principles of CrossFit, intense exercise combined with a stringent diet, and a new focus on combating chronic diseases. It sounds like it kind of mixes, the fitness he's kind of famous for with, dietary nutrition advice. I hope he doesn't start selling supplements, but I doubt he will. Anyway, in this article, they note the controversy around him and stuff, but I just never thought he's ever gotten his due, at least that I've read it. It's always been something. There's always been a but when it speaks, when I've read stuff about Glassman. And I'm just telling you that in my opinion, just in terms of fitness, he did far much more good than he did harm. Understand, I've never been a CrossFit affiliate. I went to a few certifications, but I never actively practiced CrossFit. And I think my kind of obsession with CrossFit lasted about 30 days, and I was kind of on to the next thing. And soon after that, started developing my own programming. And a few years after that, even started my own gym, or even a few months. So our approach is different, but CrossFit is still awesome. So kind of along the strength and fitness stuff, did a couple studies. We had a couple mini studies that just completed with my remote lab rats. And I think if I was to say one thing that I've learned in the strength conditioning world in my almost 2 decades of work, it's simply 3 words: programming is everything. When I talk to coaches and when I judge strength conditioning coaches, I don't look at them working out with their shirts off that I see on Instagram all the time, or them doing really complicated exercises that I see, in YouTube and Instagram, or lifting heavy weights or doing impressive stuff. What I look at is their programming and the quality of their programming. And programming to be, this is our first responsibility as strength and conditioning coaches, and that's to produce programming that works, that's effective, And unless you're in the sport of CrossFit or Olympic weightlifting or powerlifting, it's fitness that transferred to the real world. That's why the theme, or one of the things that drives us at Mountain Tactical, is that outside numbers are everything, outside performance is everything, and gym numbers mean nothing. And what that means for me as a strength conditioning coach is all of a sudden there are no shackles on what I consider to include in programming. I'm not tied to any one exercise, one method, one duration, school of thought, anything. All that drives me is what works what works in fitness that transfers outside, and I'll change at the drop of a hat if I see that something works better. That being said, what I have found is that simple programming that is especially assessment based and progressed based on assessment results, that is focused, is very powerful and very effective at producing the wanted fitness results. And we just had two mini studies that were completed by remote lab rats, both which kind of went along with this. The first was completed earlier this month in December, where I had 4 lab rats, remote lab rats. These are veteran lab rats. By veteran, I mean a lot of the academic studies you see that are written up use subjects or lab rats who are unfit or untrained college students, because they're all done at colleges. I use veteran lab rats, and most of the lab rats who complete one of my studies have completed one or more previous MTI programs. So they kind of know my approach, and I can just take a look at the programs they've completed and know that they know their way around a weight room, that they likely been training for a while. Most of our lab rats are in the 30s or early 40s. These are just experienced veteran athletes. And I like to use these athletes to use for lab for our mini studies, because they just give me a real good indication of what's going to happen to the athletes, the population actually uses our programming. So Valor is one of the oldest military programs I have in our library right now. Even though it's been around for a long time, I think it's on its 5th or 6th update or iteration. We always work to improve, and lately I've been just on a fury of updates and programming improvements to existing programming. Valor is kind of an interesting, really focused cycle. It's focused on military performance, and it includes strength, running, unloaded, and rucking assessments. And the first 3 weeks, the lab rats did the first 4 weeks, I think, of this mini study. And generally, this is a 7-week cycle. And generally, what I'll do is I'll do an initial assessment, a mid-cycle reassessment, and then I'll reset the progressions based on the mid-cycle reassessment results, and then end-of-cycle reassessment. And so the lab rats did the first 4 weeks of the study. So they did the initial assessment, progressions based on their initial assessment results, and then a mid-cycle reassessment. And we found that strength improvement, the assessment for this first part of Valor is a barbell complex, and it's the max load you can do a barbell complex at. And the lab rats increased their barbell complex load by an average of 10%. The rucking assessment, if I remember right, is a 3-mile ruck for time, and they increased their load or their rucking speed by 6% or 6.8 or almost 7%. And there's also a running assessment. I think it's a 1.5-mile run. I could have that wrong. I don't have the plan in front of me, but they increased their running speed by 7%. So these are veteran lab rats, and while those improvements may not seem impressive on the face, understand that these are veteran lab rats that are very intense training. It's a 5-day-a-week training, and they're either lifting, doing work capacity, or running, threshold intervals for 4 weeks. And they saw those improvements over 4 weeks in multi-modes. And so they're training multi-modes, and pretty much all their assessed fitness attributes went up. And that just, I hope, points to the effectiveness of the program. And the reason I do these studies is not to prove that I know how to program, but to look for holes and how I can, make it even better. I know that one of the changes I just recently made to Valor, for example, was in the previous iteration, the entire program strength work was built around the barbell complex. And if you ever done heavy barbell complexes, we have a program called Gladiator that is kind of built around a progression with the barbell complex. Anyway, they're fucking terrible. It's really intense, and it's really heavy. And like you get done with your heavy sets, and you got to sit down, if not lay down. It's that bad. It's very intense. And so I thought that 7 straight weeks of barbell complexes was too much. So a recent change I made was I changed the programming. So the second half of the strength programming uses 1RM assessments for like the back squat and bench press. Just change it up. Anyway, just an improvement for the program. Okay, so the programming works, Valor works. And so if you're on the, fence about wanting to do that program, it's a lot of work, but there are results. The second one is LabAS just completed this last week, and it was the first 4 weeks of the max effort strength plus aerobic base training plan that I have on the website. Now, it's really interesting to train max effort strength and aerobic base, looking to increase both in the same program. Max effort strength is a huge part of the programming I have for all of our athlete populations. It's a key component of it, even for the mountain athletes. And in terms of max effort strength, what I'm working on building is not necessarily power lifters and Olympic weightlifters. I'm not looking to make you as strong as you can be. I'm looking to increase your relative strength to high levels, and relative strength is strength per body weight. For example, for military, for tactical athletes, the strength standards I have for the 1 rep max front squat and 1 rep max bench press are 1.5 times your body weight, which in the pure strength world of Olympic weightlifting and powerlifting, those aren't impressive. That's not an impressive goal. But for tactical athletes who have significant endurance fitness command, work capacity fitness demand, chassis integrity fitness demand, tactical agility. I mean, tactical athletes aren't Olympic weightlifters who can go to the gym and do this, the back squat, deadlift, and bench press every day. They have to train different things and attention to training different things. Plus, actually training different things, especially work capacity endurance, can actually, retard or slow down strength improvement. So that those things work against each other. For mountain athletes don't have the similar strength demands as tactical athletes, and subsequently my strength standards for mountain athletes aren't quite as high. But there is a strength demand, especially for mountain professionals, guides, SAR personnel, others who have to carry more weight than they likely would if they were just doing a fast climb. They got to carry more weight in their back. And secondly, strength is a key to durability. Stronger athletes are simply harder to injure. If they do get injured, often don't get injured as bad. And if they do get injured, recover faster. So that's how come I have strength as a pretty significant component of our mountain athlete programming, base fitness programming metric. The other element that this program trains is aerobic base fitness. And so aerobic base is essentially your ability to move in an aerobic mode, running or rucking or uphill hiking under load very efficiently. And if you can do it very efficiently, at a pace that you can almost do forever, you're not going so hard that you're going to eventually bonk. This is a very valuable type of fitness to have for both tactical and mountain athletes. especially for military athletes on the tactical side and all mountain athletes, most of whose sports begin with, a hike uphill someplace. If we can build aerobic base, it just means that your sub-maximal or sub-threshold or this pace at which you can go forever is faster. And if you've ever, been running with somebody who has a high aerobic base, they're the people who are running next to you, and you're both going, at a jog, and they're just hardly breathing, and you're gasping for air. They just have a high aerobic base. And the way you train aerobic base is long, slow movement, like zone 2 training at a low heart rate. You can't really improve aerobic base by going hard and fast. You have to just go long and slow. So this program put these two kind of fitness attributes together in the same program in an unlikely mix. 1RM strength assessment and progression for, I think, is the back squat, bench press, deadlift, and max rep pull-ups. And then an aerobic base assessment, something that I developed, which is a 60-minute run on a flat course or just around a track for distance, but I govern your heart rate. The heart rate is 180 minus your age, within 5 beats on either side of that heart rate. So to do this plan, you need a heart rate monitor. So for example, say you're 30 years old, 180 minus 30 is 150. And so for this aerobic base test that I developed, I want you to run around a track for 60 minutes in a heart rate between 145 and 155. So stay within 10 beats on either side of that 150 number, which is 180 minus your heart rate. And that should be really close to your zone 2 mode. Anyway, that's how you develop aerobic base. Getting back to study results. After 4 weeks, the lab rats, 4 lab rats completed it. Again, all in their 30s or 40s, veteran lab rats. They saw average 5% increase in back squat 1RM, 6.3% increase in bench press 1RM, 4.4% increase in deadlift 1RM. And they also saw around a 14% increase in their aerobic base fitness. And pull-ups, no data for that. The numbers were all over the place. One athlete improved by 50% the number of pull-ups he could do, and another one saw like a 13% decrease. Couldn't do as many the second time as the first, so I just threw out the pull-up numbers. Anyway, just another example that how I test my programming, and I hope demonstration of programming works. The aerobic base improvement is interesting. This schedule for this training plan had 2 times as much aerobic base training as it did strength training. It was a 6-day-a-week program, or it is a 6-day-a-week program, and 2 days a week are training strength, and 4 days a week are doing slow running to train aerobic base. The reason for this is that studies and my own work has shown that building endurance simply takes a lot longer and needs more attention than building strength. So an interesting plan. I encourage you to check it out and maybe try it on your own. I guess, and finally, a couple things on the quiet professional side that I've been thinking about a lot lately. I wrote an essay years ago. It's called Fixing It. And the title, the essay is called The Liberating Power of Fixing It. And the idea here is that as a quiet professional, nothing isn't our job. Everything is our job. And fixing it is this idea that if you see a problem, you don't wait for someone else to do it. You don't say to yourself, it's someone else's job. You just get in and you fix it. And a few things that this does for you. First of all, if you see something needs fixed, you don't fix it, you're going to feel a little guilty about that. Because if you see it needs to be done, you don't do it, there's some guilt that you didn't do it. It's just unavoidable if you're a conscientious person. Secondly, and this is the most common one, if you say it's not my job, what it's doing is it's on some level it's putting yourself above others. And that's just not healthy. So there is an incredible leveling element to the liberating power of fixing it, just doing it and understanding that you're not above others and proving it by, doing what may or may not be someone else's job. Not to help them out, just because you see something needs to be fixed, and as a quiet professional, you're the one who fixes stuff. What I've kind of found is that I've applied this not only to stuff at work, but everyday stuff. And the most common way I deploy it is when I'm walking someplace and I see garbage on the ground. Usually a grocery store parking lot, and the garbage is usually pretty damn nasty. It's cigarette butt, someone dropped their milkshake, or, something's been there for a while, other people run up. Other people walk over this and they think it's not my job to clean this up. The janitor from the store or the guy who does the carts at the store will clean it up. And I try to force myself to step over and pick it up and throw it away on my way in or out of the store. And again, I'm not doing this to get people to look at me or say what a great guy I am. I'm doing this to keep I just found that by doing this, it's liberating. I don't have the guilt of seeing something needs to be done and not doing it. I don't have the hubris or arrogance of putting myself above somebody else by seeing something that needs to be done that I could do, but deciding not to because, quote, it's someone else's job. Anyway, it's a way that I found to reinforce the idea of craftsmanship, putting mission first, and humility every day, kind of as an aspiring quiet professional. And you can do this in your own house. Not your job to do the dishes. They need to be done. Just do them. Not your job to take out the laundry. Just do it. Not your job to put a new roll of toilet paper in. Just do it. And you'll be amazed at how liberating fixing it is. So the next one is this idea. I don't think I've written an official essay about this, but I've thought about it for a while, and I've done some work on my own writing on it. And that's the idea of practicing to learn and not necessarily to improve. So this isn't fitness. This is like technical practice. Sport related, you're learning a new sport, you're learning a new craft, and whenever you're learning something, it's not like you make improvement every day. And sometimes if you don't improve, you can get frustrated and quit the sport, stop trying, or worse, just stop trying to improve. This shift in thinking about the goal of practice for me, generally we practice to improve, but mentally what I found is by shifting the goal, not necessarily improvement, but to learn something. No matter what, no matter if I improve or not, I'm going to learn something during this practice session. And by doing that, it's reinvigorated the way I think about, practice, technical practice. And then I know no matter what happens, my technical practice isn't going to be for waste. So, if I'm a climber and I go to, climb or go bouldering, and not only can I not on site what I thought I could, for some reason, this day I have difficult climbing where I know I can climb. It's just an off day. But then, I kind of think about my day coming to the crag or whatever, the boulders, and I, realize that maybe I, drank too much alcohol the night before or, ate a crappy breakfast of donuts and, Fruit Loops or anyway, there's just always something you can learn from a practice session. Even if I learned I didn't warm up correctly, maybe it's a better warm up. I'd be able to climb something better, a new way to warm up, something about my equipment. But if you go in each practice session with an open mindset to learning and not holding yourself accountable to improve, you will learn something. No matter what, you'll learn something, no matter how small. Sometimes it'll be something big, sometimes it'll be something small. The thing about it is that if you're always learning, then eventual improvement is guaranteed. Because after you learn enough, you're going to get better. You won't get better every training session or every practice session, but if you learn something every one, that learning will stack up, and eventually it'll topple over and you'll improve whatever sport or craft or job task or whatever you're trying to do. So think about that. Now, when you go to practice, it takes deliberate effort. You got to try to practice a skill that's right on the edge of your capability. When you mess it up, you need to think through what happened, identify what went wrong, intently try to change that the next time you try the rep, or try, the next practice session or whatever. That's a deliberate learning. But if you're deliberate about it and you practice to learn, not to improve, then practice will never get stale. You'll never get frustrated because you can always learn something. And then you just got to have some faith that improvement will come. All right, that's the MTI podcast for this week. This is Rob Shaw. I'm the founder of the Mountain Tactical Institute. Questions, comments, email me directly, rob@mtntactical.com. And hope you have a great week.